Good morning, good Erev Shabbos, and welcome to Acharei Torah's virtual Shabbos Drasha, Acharei Mos Kedoshim, May 1st and 2nd. You should be holy, for I am holy. I am God, your God. That's the beginning of the second of this week's two parashiyos. First, we read Acharei Mos, which is about Yom Kippur, and then we read Kedoshim, which is about being a holy people. It tells us what to be, and also how to be an Am Kadosh. There are numerous suggestions in the Parsha, in fact, over 50 of them, of how to be holy, from leaving the ends of your vineyard for the needy to harvest, to having respect for the temple, from having awe of one's parents, to not being a glutton or a drunkard. Let me suggest another dimension of what is supposed to be special about the Jewish people, one of our unique gifts to the world, and it's based on another verse also found in Parshat Kedoshim, the famous V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, you should love another as you love yourself. A particularly beautiful dimension of holiness is how we speak about and think about our fellow Jew, in particular, those with whom we don't always see eye to eye. Ideally, we should be able to disagree, but with compassion and even love. We had a nice conversation this week among three rabbis in Toronto, talking about the current pandemic situation. It was truly heartwarming to see so many people from our shul among the hundreds listening in on Zoom. Inevitably, what came up was a topic of some Jews who are not following the quarantining rules. They are, in some cases, reported in the media this week, accidentally, and in some cases, maybe not so accidentally, not following the rules of isolation. The gabbai of one of the shuls in New York, whose rabbi passed away, and in the outpouring of honor for him, too many people took to the streets to follow the funeral procession. So this gabbai wrote a public letter apologizing for the incident and explaining that they had mandated social distancing precautions that most people adhered to, but some people ignored, unfortunately. It emerged later that they actually organized the entire funeral in cooperation with the municipal police. In any case, it drew attention and bad publicity. It was not a Kiddush Hashem, to say the least. Here in this very week of Kedoshim Tihiyu, you should be a special people, supposed to tell us that we should light the way of righteousness and others should be inspired to follow, not the opposite. Shame. Then again, others who held weddings or got kids together to make a clandestine cheder were not so apologetic nor so accidental. If you saw that video of the three Toronto rabbis in conversation, which is posted now on our website, you can take a look if you want. I want to underscore what I said, which is that all these gatherings, accidental or intentional, were wrong and misguided and should not have taken place. If I would have been the rabbi that were asked, I would have said unequivocally, no, don't do it, not for any reason. We're all suffering from the lack of community gathering. We're all missing simchas, and we're missing the precious sounds of children learning Torah together. Zoom cheder, Zoom yeshiva is the best we have now, but it's a strain on everyone. But at this moment in history, we just have to tough it out. Beyond that, there ought to be another dimension of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love another as you love yourself, which is this week Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. This week's parsha. If you want to take a look, and look up the commentaries on the Chumash also, and look further afield if you have resources. We sent out some links for further research in the Thursday email. You'll see that this mitzvah has quite a lot of depth and dimension to it. Loving another, in my simple understanding, doesn't mean only when the other behaves exactly as you wish he or she would. What do you need the Torah to tell you that for? When someone's doing exactly what I think they should be doing, what's not to love? Then again, anyone who was blessed with children might be able to recall one or maybe two incidents when the child didn't listen to you and didn't behave exactly as you instructed or would have wished. Did we stop loving our children the moment they stopped following our instructions? God forbid. On another level that applies to all of us, we're all somebody's children. I don't know if you feel this sentiment, but I certainly do. Not everything that I've done in my life or the way that I've done it was exactly the way my parents taught me or would have wished for me to do. I don't think they stopped loving me despite that. And the love continued even when I did my own thing. And a higher level that also applies to all of us when we say in Elul and Tishrei, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, God is a parent to us in many ways, and especially in this way. That as a parent, God expects us to do certain things and refrain, hold ourselves back from doing other things. They're called the 613 mitzvahs. And God instructs us how to act, how to behave towards each other, and how to comport ourselves through life. You can find a lot of guidance in this in Pirkei Avos, which we're studying a chapter a week through the summertime. This Shabbos is chapter 3. It's in your siddur. Take a look. Nevertheless, what happens? Not all of us behave as we should all the time. It's unfortunate, but as they say in that wondrous mystical phrase, it is what it is. Not every Jew on the planet behaves exactly as the Torah instructs every minute of their day. It's a fact. Unfortunate, but there you have it. So does God stop loving us for a minute? Stop sustaining us? Stop sending us blessings of life and joy and community and friendship and health? Please, God, those should all continue and increase. Thankfully, many of us, but not all of us, aren't worried about whether we'll have a roof over our heads and our next meal, as are many people in the current uncertain times. God still loves us and continues to bestow upon us individually and as a kehillah and as a nation and as a Jewish state, as evidenced by Yom HaAtzmaut this past week, sustenance and success and well-being spiritually and physically. Not always easy, doesn't always come without challenges and difficulties, but we are loved. The question, or one question that this week's Parsha poses to us is, can we love one another? And love one another here also means love one another when the other isn't behaving. Because when I misbehave, I have a dozen reasons I can explain to you why it's really okay what I'm doing, why it's really actually in truth a mitzvah. But really, it's sort of a story I'm telling myself. If I'd be a little bit more honest, or ask you even, or ask a rabbi, it would turn out that probably I shouldn't really be doing this or that. But in my own mind, I have plenty of rationalizations. So when someone else is doing something that we know they shouldn't, the instinct of many Jews is to call it out, write an editorial, spread the word. Look, here are some Jews doing the wrong thing. Everybody see that? Isn't that bad? I'm thinking about this a lot this week, and I want to suggest that healthy Judaism cannot consist of calling out other people's poor behavior. Let me repeat that to be clear. Healthy Judaism cannot consist of calling out other people's poor behavior. And to be crystal clear, lots of people do lots of things that aren't 100%, that they really shouldn't be doing. And if they are open to some loving reproof, it's a mitzvah to correct them. It's also a mitzvah not to give it when they are not open to loving reproof. But in our heart of hearts, we cannot resent or hate or despise other Jews, no matter what, no matter how they behave. By the way, that happens to be its own prohibition of the Torah from the same above mentioned verse. Resenting or disparaging or bearing a grudge against another Jew, even far away, doing something we don't like, doesn't hurt them, the least of which because they never know about it. It does hurt us, though, because those bitter, judgmental, dismissive feelings hurt us at least as much, if not more than they hurt others. You know the saying, I heard it attributed to Mandela, that resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it will kill your enemy. That's a little extreme, but you get the picture. Walking around stewing all day because others aren't behaving is not conducive to a healthy soul, even when they really are wrong. What we have to be able to look upon others with both a clear-eyed view and at the same time through the lens of love. That to me is what's suggested by the fact that we have Kedoshim Tihiyu, you should be a holy people, and V'ahavta l'reacha, love one another, together in the same parsha. It's a little early because the story is really for a couple of weeks away for Lag BaOmer, but it's possibly the most famous story of isolation and quarantine and social distancing in all the Torah. So let's review it because it applies very much to the matter at hand. If you look in the Gemara in Shabbos on page 33b, we read about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai saying a few very harshly worded, but nonetheless true, things about the Roman government. Under Roman rule, we did not enjoy the same civil liberties that we enjoy in today's world. So if you were reported to the authorities for sedition, they would hunt you down and kill you. So to avoid this, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did a little sequestration, a little isolation in place. He hid in a cave with his son Elazar for 12 years. So the Romans wouldn't find him and arrest him and execute him. Social distancing, just him and his son in a bubble for 12 years. What's most interesting is what happened when they emerged. I'm sure it took their eyes a little while to adjust, but even so, what happened when they came out of this cave? What had they been doing the whole time? They had most definitely not been watching Netflix for 12 years. I can tell you that for sure. There was no Wi-Fi in the cave, and I'm pretty sure if there had been, Rabbi Shimon would not have wasted his time on Netflix or watching cat videos on YouTube. They were learning constantly for those 12 years, separated from the world, and when they came out, the Gemara says, whatever Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gazed upon burst into flame and burnt up in a cloud of fire. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon looked askance at people behaving differently than he thought they should. Here he just spent 12 years learning Torah, Yomam V'Laila, round the clock, and you're spending time on worldly pursuits, baking bread, playing Scrabble, killing time, God forbid, that horrible phrase. Whatever Rabbi Shimon looked at burst into flame. Remember what happened in that Gemara? A voice came from heaven and said, did you emerge from the cave to destroy my world? Get back in there. And they went back in for another year. And when they re-emerged after the 13th year, whatever Rabbi Elazar looked at and caused damage, Rabbi Shimon, his father, looked at and healed. Were the people behaving any differently a year later? No. But the perspective of these rabbis changed. They did a little tshuva. They learned to look upon others with a bit more generosity of spirit. Others didn't change. Their view of others did. Friends, we are in the cave right now. We're in isolation and a kind of deprivation that I don't think any of us knew in our lifetimes, with the rare exception of those who survived the Holocaust years in Europe. From those generations, we heard about people who hid in barns or holes in the ground or attics for 2 years or more to avoid being captured and put on the trains. But that's not our experience, the vast majority of us. We, on the whole, have lived lives of wonderful, delicious freedom. Freedom to live as we choose, and by and large, we've done well with it. The question this parsha is asking us, among others, is how will we change as a result of this experience that we're going through now in the pandemic of 2020? There will come a day, hopefully sooner rather than later, when we emerge from this cave and we start looking at things around us. Actually, thanks to the net, we don't have to wait. We can actually look at the world around us from inside our caves. What a wonder of technology. We might ask ourselves, even though it's still a week and a half before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's Yortzeit, Lag BaOmer, does my gaze, my view of others who don't behave as I would expect them to, does it burn them up or does it heal them? Does it burn me up as collateral damage by looking disapprovingly, without love, without compassion, at my fellow Jew who doesn't follow the rules the way I think they should be followed? Or does it heal me by knowing that just as others sometimes fail to live their best lives, I also have space to improve? And the more we embrace that and help one another to be better, the better off we'll all be. To sum up, even though we are prohibited by circumstance from reading the Torah publicly in these difficult and challenging times, we're nevertheless living with the Torah's eternal messages and studying and deriving our life from its teachings. Ki hem chayenu v'orech yamenu. They are our life and the length of our days. If you aren't reading the Parsha every week, you should be. It's all over the net, and if you need help getting a hard copy, let me know. I will help you. That precious Torah calls us to be a holy people, which the prophet Yeshaya explains as an or lagoyim, a light unto the nations, a shining example to the world of how to behave to each other and with each other. We do an admirable job of that much of the time, but no one's perfect. Part of being a shining example, part of being an inspiration to the world, is how we handle it when those among our ranks trip and fall. Do we boo and hiss and rub it in? Or do we grit our teeth and with love carry on and say, I don't approve of the behavior, but they're still my people, even when they misbehave. Why should we say that? Because it's exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. Even though they misbehave, they are still my people. This time, it's not Rabbi Shimon and his son, Rabbi Elazar in the cave. Now it's us. The biggest question to us will be, how will this time in the cave change us? Will we emerge from the cave with a gaze that burns or a gaze that heals? Will we come out of this period of isolation and seclusion with renewed and deepened resentment of those who didn't make as much of their time in the cave as we did, thinking that we're so much better and we've got more of the truth than they do and they'd better wise up and get themselves on the straight and narrow? That's one possibility. Or will we use this time to refine our gaze, to become more generous, more loving, more accepting, even of those who don't yet have it down perfectly, who still struggle with Chaye Shah, the moment-to-moment temptations of this world? Will we come out of the cave with renewed commitment to our own learning, our own tzedakah, our own engagement with our kehillah and its minyanim and programs and learning projects, focusing all our constructive criticism on ourselves and what we can do to make the world better, rather than waiting for others to wise up? It's a great challenge, and in a sense, it's always the challenge. I found inspiration last week in a prayer in a siddur that's not ours. Maybe the new edition of the siddur has it. I haven't seen it. My son Moishi pointed out to me that Rabbi Twersky mentioned this prayer in the Pesach edition of the Mizrahi newsletter. You can find that online too. Rabbi Twersky says there's a prayer in the Siddur of Noam Elimelech as an introduction to Shachris. It's lengthy. It's a 4-page Yehi Ratzon. Among many other things, it says towards the end, Tein b'libenu, please make it so in our hearts. Shenira kol echad, each of us should see, or we should see in each and every one of our fellow man and woman, ma'alas chavenu velo chesronam. We should see their good qualities and not their failings. Note that the prayer is most definitely not, please God, make everyone behave the way I think they should. Doesn't even say, make everyone behave the way you tell them to. Doesn't say that. It says this, when others fall short, as happens sometimes, let that not be my focus. As much fun and as satisfying as it is to talk all day about the faults in others, it says, no matter what, let me see the good in others. That's a major element of Kedoshim Tihiyu, I'll suggest to you, in being a holy people. And also in V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, in loving another as we love ourselves. May we use whatever time is left in this cave to refine and clarify our vision and emerge not broken and disheartened, but more whole and more healed and more healing and generous towards ourselves and towards others. Good Shabbos.